Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. Rain fell in cold needles against black umbrellas as Raina Crowther stood over her mother's coffin. Silent Spine Hill was supposed to be sacred, but the whispers dripping from every mouth felt poisoned. Worthless, someone hissed behind her. She couldn't even afford a proper burial. The words struck like a slap. Raina's throat tightened, hands shaking as she held a single white daisy, her mother's favorite. Ellery Crowther died with nothing, no savings, no pack respect, no legacy, just debts and rumors. Raina's dress clung to her knees, soaked and thin, borrowed from her aunt. People didn't bother lowering their voices anymore. Ellery was gone. The pack had no reason to pretend. Raina heard Sable Winterheart's voice, sharp as broken glass. She should have been thrown to the rogues. That would have been a cheaper funeral. Someone laughed. Raina didn't turn. If she looked, she might scream. She might crumble. She might run. Instead, she pressed her cold fingers to the coffin's rough surface. "I'm here, Mama," she whispered. But grief wasn't the worst part. Shame was. And today, shame was hunting her. Marin Crowther, her aunt, tried to hush the crowd, but nobody listened. The Grimvale pack gathered like judges, not mourners. Raina stared at the muddy ground, refusing to let tears fall. Crying here would be another weakness, another thing for them to tear apart later. A council member cleared his throat, preparing to read Ellery's name for the final time, when suddenly the air shifted. A sound like thunder rippled through the trees. Heads turned toward the path leading up the hill. Leather boots crunched on gravel, shadows moved. Then wolves bowed their heads instinctively. Raina felt every heartbeat in her body slow, heavy as stones. The murmurs died. Even Sable shut up. He was coming. Arn Wolfstride, Alpha of Grimvale, stepped into the rain. 6'4", shoulders built like an oak, black coat whipping in the wind. His presence commanded gravity itself. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Raina's heart tried to hide inside her ribs. Why was he here? Arn rarely attended funerals. He didn't attend much of anything that didn't involve pack security or blood. He had a reputation, cold, unreadable, dangerous. But today his eyes were fixed on Raina as if no one else existed. Council members exchanged startled glances. Sable's face twisted with confusion. Raina didn't understand. Ellery was an outcast. The pack ignored her for years. Why would Arn Wolfstride, the Alpha, care now? He stopped only inches away. Rain streaked down the edges of his jaw, dripping from his dark hair. Who called her worthless? His voice rolled, low and eerie. Everyone froze. No one answered. Arn's gaze cut through the crowd like a blade. Torrin Maddox shifted nervously, stepping back. Even Corvin Hale, the Gamma, raised his eyebrows at the Alpha's sudden intensity. Raina felt heat crawl up her spine. She didn't know whether to bow, run, or breathe again. Arn's eyes, silver and sharp like winter moonlight, returned to her. "You deserve respect," he said. Simple words, but the pack reacted like he just declared war. Sable scoffed, loud enough for the rain to carry. Respect? For her? She stepped forward, chin high, lips curling. She's nothing but dead weight. Her mother was a thief. Everyone knows Ellery stole from the... She didn't finish. Aaron turned, and Sable's voice died instantly. "Say another word," the Alpha murmured, "and I will silence you myself." The threat didn't sound angry. It sounded factual, inevitable. Arn then reached for Raina's wrist, so gentle it startled her, and lifted her hand away from the coffin. She stared at him, trembling. Rain poured harder, like the clouds were holding their breath. "Raina Crowther," Aaron said clearly, his voice echoing. "I choose you." Silence collapsed over the hill. Gasps burst from every direction. Someone dropped a prayer stone. A wolf in human form cursed under his breath. The council head, Mistress Orla Vexley, almost choked. Alpha, surely that's a mistake. No, Aaron replied. As of today, she comes with me to Thornridge Manor. Raina blinked, confused, stunned, terrified. Sable's voice cracked. She's worthless. Aaron didn't look away. Not anymore. Raina's pulse hammered. What did that mean? Why her? Why today? She tried to speak, but her throat closed. Arn's hand remained on her wrist, steady, unshaking. Raindrops gathered in her eyelashes until she couldn't see. The funeral was forgotten. The insults silenced. The Alpha had spoken. Someone whispered, "He never chooses an Omega." Someone else hissed, "This will start a war." Raina finally found her voice, barely a whisper. "Why me?" Aaron leaned in, just enough for her to hear. "Because they fear you." The hill went colder. The world shifted. Raina didn't understand the meaning, but everyone else did. And for the first time all day, the pack looked at her not with pity, but with fear. The rain slowed to a mist by the time Raina reached Thornridge Manor. Gray stone walls rose like a fortress, tall windows reflecting the dying light of evening. Her aunt's borrowed dress had dried stiff against her skin. She still smelled like wet earth from the graveyard. Arn walked beside her in silence, his steps measured, his presence oppressive, but strangely calming. Omega servants opened the heavy iron doors without looking at her. They looked afraid. Inside, the manor smelled of cedar smoke and something darker, wolf musk, and secrets. Raina wanted answers, but her voice kept failing her. The humiliation from the funeral still burned like a brand on her chest. Worthless. The word repeated in her mind, echoing. Why would the Alpha choose someone everyone spat on? Arn led her into a long hall lined with portraits of former Alphas. Eyes followed her. Painted eyes that seemed to judge whether she deserved to breathe inside these walls. Raina kept her head down, fingers twisting together nervously. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, the sound of boots scuffed behind her. So the rumors are true, a voice drawled. Dax Fenwick, the beta, leaned in the doorway. Arms crossed, sharp grin carved across his face. His gray hair was tied back, revealing a jagged scar along his temple. The Alpha brought back a Crowther. His tone wasn't mocking, just curious, but curiosity here was dangerous. Arn didn't stop. She stays in the East Wing, under guard. Guard? Dax raised a brow and glanced at Raina. From who? She looks like she needs a sandwich more than protection. His attempt at humor only made Raina shrink. Arn shot him a look. Dax shut up. They climbed a staircase that seemed to never end, lit by flickering lanterns. Raina caught glimpses of rooms filled with old books, maps of territories, locked cabinets, and blades mounted on polished wood. Thornridge Manor was both a home and a warning. At the top of the stairs, Aaron stopped outside a room with double doors carved with wolves circling a moon. "You'll stay here," he said. Raina's voice finally forced itself out. "Alpha," she whispered, trying to sound steady. "Why did you choose me?" Aaron didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned her face like he was searching for the right piece of a puzzle. "There's something you don't know about your mother." That sentence hit harder than all the insults at the funeral. Raina froze. "My mother?" Aaron nodded. Ellery Crowther was not who they said she was. Raina's stomach twisted. All her life she heard whispers, thief, traitor, coward. "She died alone," Raina whispered. "Nobody cared." Aaron stepped closer, and the room seemed smaller. "You're wrong. Someone cared. Someone still does." Before she could ask anything else, the door creaked open. The manor's healer, Leora Farrow, entered carrying a steaming cup of strong peppermint tea. She had long auburn braids and soft freckles, her expression calm but alert, like a person who saw too much. "She needs warmth and rest," Leora said, eyeing Raina's damp dress. "And food. Real food." Aaron nodded once. "Do it." Leora approached Raina with the tea, voice gentle. "Drink." Raina wrapped her hands around the cup, its heat shocking her fingers. "Thank you." she said softly, surprised by the kindness. Lyra studied her with eyes too knowing. Ellery saved my life once. Raina jerked, confused. My mother? Lyra nodded. 18 years ago. I was rogue-born. The pack wanted to throw me to the border. Your mother hid me under Thornridge Manor until the Alpha at the time agreed to let me stay. Raina's mind spun. Ellery never told her anything like that. She made burned soup and patched clothes. She cried at night when she thought Raina was asleep. Lyra's voice turned quieter. Your mother was brave, more than people will admit. Raina swallowed hard, the tea turning sour in her throat. If she was brave, why did everyone call her a thief? Lyra hesitated, glancing at Arin. Something unspoken passed between them. Secrets stacked on secrets. Arin stepped forward, voice low, controlled. Ellery Crowther stole something from the council. Raina's pulse stuttered. What? Arin didn't blink. A prophecy. The word hit Raina like lightning. She stared at him, tea forgotten in her hands. Prophecy? Arin nodded once. About the future Alpha, about power, about bloodlines. Dax appeared again in the hall, leaning against the wall, eyes cold. And guess who the prophecy mentioned? His gaze drilled into Raina, Ellery's daughter. Raina couldn't breathe. The walls felt too close, the tea too hot. Everyone kept staring, waiting for her to understand something impossible. Sable had called her worthless. The pack laughed at her mother. But suddenly, everything felt flipped upside down. Raina whispered, barely audible. Me? Arin's voice came like thunder in the quiet. You are not worthless. You are marked. Then, somewhere deep in Thornridge Manor, a wolf howled. Long, warning, trembling through the floorboards, and Raina realized nothing about her life had ever been ordinary. And someone, somewhere, already wanted her dead. Raina barely slept. Shadows shifted in the corners of her room, and every quiet noise made her tense. She kept replaying Arin's words. You are marked. Marked for what? The manor walls held secrets heavier than stone. At dawn, a sharp knock jarred her awake. Dax Fenwick stepped in, tossing a bundle of clothing onto her bed. Training gear, he said. Raina sat up, blinking. Training? Dax nodded, smirking slightly. Alpha's orders, if someone wants you dead, you should at least know how to duck. His tone carried casual humor, but his eyes were serious. Outside the window, wolves moved in formation along gravel paths. Thornridge Manor wasn't just a home. It was a fortress, preparing for battle. Raina changed quickly, pulling on black fitted pants and a plain tunic. She caught her reflection in the mirror. Wild brown hair, dark eyes still red from tears. She looked small, but something inside her wouldn't break. Not today. Dax led her through the manor and out toward Greyfang Woods, where morning fog coiled between the trees like breath from unseen creatures. Greyfang Woods was ancient, branches knotted like fists, moss covering shattered stones, the smell of damp soil rising thick in the air. They stopped near a clearing where Corvin Hale waited, arms folded, 2 wooden staffs sticking out of the ground beside him. Corvin wasn't friendly like Dax. His eyes scanned Raina with pure appraisal, measuring, calculating. So, he said flatly, the prophecy girl. His voice held no awe, only pressure. I'm not, Raina began, but Dax cut her off. She doesn't even know what that means yet. Corvin snorted. She better learn fast. He handed Raina one of the staffs. It felt heavy, awkward, unbalanced. Corvin raised his own. Show me your stance. Raina had none. She'd never fought anyone, not even a school bully. Feet apart, Corvin instructed. Wider. Bend your knees like you're ready to stay standing when someone tries to knock you over. Raina tried, biting her lip. Corvin struck without warning. A blur of wood swung toward her ribs. She flinched and stumbled, breath catching. Lesson 1, Corvin said. No warning. Pain sparked in her side, but something else flickered under it. Anger. You could have asked first, she snapped. Dax chuckled. Corvin didn't. Enemies don't ask, he said. Get up. Raina forced herself upright, hands shaking, taking the staff again. Corvin attacked faster this time, but she raised her weapon just in time, wood cracking against wood. The impact rattled her bones, but she stayed up. "Good," Dax called. "Do it again." Corvin swung low, sweeping for her legs. Reyna jumped instinctively, heart pounding. The staff missed by inches. Corvin grinned, a rare, sharp flash of approval. "Not bad." Reyna felt a strange heat building in her stomach, spreading through her limbs, humming like electricity. Each time Corvin moved, she sensed something just before he struck, like a ghost warning her. On the third swing, she parried right, surprising even herself. Corvin blinked. "She anticipates," he murmured. Dax's face changed. "Just like Ellery did." Reyna lowered her staff, breathing hard. "Tell me about my mother," she said. Corvin exchanged a look with Dax. Long, silent, wary. Dax finally spoke. "Ellery worked for the council years ago. She was a record keeper, handling ancient pack laws." Reyna frowned. "That doesn't sound dangerous." "It wasn't," Dax said, "until she found something she wasn't supposed to. A document older than our history, carved into stone. It mentioned an Omega girl born under a blood moon, with the power to shift the balance between packs." Reyna felt a chill spreading through her. "Omega girl?" "Born to no rank," Dax clarified. "No status. Invisible until she becomes something else." Corvin leaned closer. "Ellery ran the day she read it. The council wanted to erase the prophecy, so it would never come true." Reyna swallowed hard, stomach twisting. "So they called her a thief?" Dax nodded. "They had to make everyone hate her so no one would believe the truth." The woods fell quiet again. Birds went silent. Even the wind paused like it was listening. A branch cracked in the distance. Corvin snapped his head toward the sound. Dax stepped forward, sniffing the air. Reyna slowly turned, gripping her staff tighter. Through the fog, a figure appeared. A man with tangled hair and wild eyes, skin streaked with dirt, a scar slashing across his jaw. He looked feral, wrong, like someone who lived too long outside boundaries. "Silas Ward," Dax muttered. "A rogue." Corvin positioned himself between Silas and Reyna. "Turn around," he warned. Silas didn't move. His voice was broken gravel. "Too late. They know." Dax's muscles tensed. "Who knows?" Silas's gaze fell on Reyna, desperate, terrified. "The council. They know the prophecy survived." Reyna's pulse roared in her ears. Silas pointed at her, trembling. "They're coming for her. Tonight." Corvin's hand moved to the knife strapped at his hip. Dax stepped closer to Reyna, shielding her with his body. Reyna could barely breathe, terror crawling up her spine. Silas's final whisper cut through the morning air like a blade. "Run!" And then, in a flash of gray fur and bones cracking, he shifted, and the forest exploded into chaos. Silas's shift happened so fast, Reyna barely saw bones snap, fur burst, and eyes turned feral gold before he vanished into the trees. The forest exploded with motion. Corvin bolted after him, shifting in midair, fur black as night. Dax pulled Reyna back behind a fallen log, breath harsh. "Stay low," he hissed. Reyna's heart pounded like a drum inside her ribs. Branches cracked, snarls echoed through Greyfang woods, and birds scattered in a frenzied storm of wings. Reyna peeked over the log, staff clenched tight, useless against wolves. She saw flashes, gray fur, black fur, then dirt flying as bodies slammed. Silas fought like a creature with nothing left to lose. "He wasn't lying," Dax muttered, eyes scanning the fog. "If he came here, it means someone sent him." Reyna's pulse stuttered. "The council?" "Or worse," Dax said. Their fight crashed through underbrush, then suddenly stopped. Silence. Too sudden, too heavy. Reyna held her breath. Then, from deep in the woods, a howl carried a single clear warning. "Run!" Dax grabbed her hand and pulled. "We're moving, now." They sprinted through the trees, Reyna stumbling on roots and rocks, lungs burning. Dax never let go of her wrist. "Where are we going?" she gasped. "To a place no council hound will follow," Dax said. "The ruined vale." The name sent a shiver crawling down her spine. She had heard whispers. a forbidden border where old magic lingered, where even wolves feared stepping too close. The morning fog swallowed them as they pushed deeper. Trails grew darker, colder. Trees bowed inward like watching giants. "Slow," Dax said, pausing, "to listen." Reyna bent over, catching her breath. "What about Corvin?" "He'll find us," Dax said, but his voice didn't sound confident. They continued until the forest opened to a valley filled with broken stones, ancient pillars cracked in half, moss covering weathered symbols carved by hands long gone. The air tasted metallic, like old blood. "What is this place?" Reyna whispered. Dax scanned the shadows. "History no one wants to remember." They stepped down into the ruins, boots crunching on shards of stone. Reyna noticed markings along a shattered arch, a moon, a wolf, and something else that looked like a circle of flames. A chill touched her spine. "Dax, these are the same symbols I saw in Mother's box." Dax stopped, startled. "What box?" "She kept a small metal box under her floorboards," Reyna said. "I thought it was junk, but it had symbols just like these." Dax cursed under his breath. Ellery hid more than a prophecy. He knelt beside one of the stones, tracing the carvings. "This ruin is older than the Grimvale Pack, older than Thornridge Manor. It belonged to the first Alpha." Reyna frowned, confused. "The first Alpha?" Dax nodded. "The one who made the laws every pack still follows, and the one the council doesn't want anyone remembering." He turned to her slowly. "Your mother didn't steal a prophecy from them. She stole it from him." Reyna's skin prickled. "But why me? I'm not strong. I'm not—" "Stop," Dax said sharply. "You keep saying you're nothing, but someone is killing to keep you from learning the truth." A low growl rolled through the ruins. Not Corvin's. Something darker. Dax stood instantly, knife in hand. Reyna turned, fear sliding cold down her spine. A figure stepped from behind a broken pillar. Tall, dressed in council black, gray eyes flat with cruelty. Torin Maddock. Reyna recognized him from her mother's funeral. "Omega," he spat like the word tasted foul. "You should have stayed invisible." Dax stepped in front of her, blade ready. "Turn around, Torin," he said. "Not today." Torin smirked, pulling out a steel-tipped crossbow bolt drenched in something tar black. Reyna's breath caught. Poison. Wolf killer. "The council sends their regards," Torin said, raising the bow. Everything slowed. Dax lunged, but he was too far. Reyna felt a spark explode in her chest, heat rushing to her hands, vision flashing white. Torin released the bolt. Reyna screamed a word she didn't know, a sound ripped from somewhere older than her blood. The bolt hit an invisible force in front of her, like air turning solid, and snapped in two before falling harmlessly to the ground. Torin stared in horror. Dax froze. Reyna blinked, heart hammering, hands shaking. Something had answered her scream. Something ancient. Torin backed away slowly, voice shaking. "She's awakening." That was all he said before, turning and running, crashing through the forest until he vanished. Dax looked at Reyna like she was made of fire. "What did you just do?" Reyna sank to her knees, staring at her trembling hands. "I don't know," she whispered. Her pulse pounded everywhere. Wrists, throat, temples. She could feel something alive in her bones. Dax knelt beside her, breath uneven. "We need Arin, now." Reyna nodded, but dread tightened around her like iron. Torin said the council was coming. Tonight. Dax helped her rise slowly. The ancient ruins loomed around them, symbols glowing faintly like they recognized her. Reyna looked at her hands once more. And for the first time, she wasn't afraid of being worthless. She was terrified of being powerful. Behind them, far away, a howl echoed. But this one wasn't a warning. It was a hunt beginning. The storm from the morning had faded, leaving Thornridge Manor cloaked in a gray, restless sky. Reyna barely made it back from the ruined vale before the Alpha's pack assembled. Aaron Wolfstride, standing at the top of the grand staircase, radiated control and danger, the air around him taut with authority. His silver eyes locked on her, and for the first time, Reyna felt the weight of the prophecy settle on her shoulders. She wanted to speak, to ask what had happened in the veil, but the moment the Alpha's gaze landed on her, words died in her throat. The manor felt alive, every shadow a spectator, every creak a whisper. Servants moved quickly, silently, like ghosts. Dax and Corvin flanked her, their presence steadying yet reminding her how fragile her own strength still was. Behind her, the grand hall stretched into darkness, lit only by faint candlelight and the occasional flicker of lightning beyond the windows. Reyna's heart raced. She was no longer merely the Crowther girl. The pack's eyes, full of judgment earlier, now held a tense curiosity. And Aaron? He wasn't just watching. He was assessing, as if weighing the weight of her soul against the centuries of pack legacy. The council's interference had shaken the Grimvale pack. Aaron's hand rested on the hilt of his ceremonial dagger, but his posture was calm, predatory, like a wolf that never stopped smelling the wind. "The council knows," he said simply, voice low, resonant. Reyna swallowed hard, stepping forward. "Alpha, they'll come for me, for the prophecy." His eyes softened just a fraction. "I know," he replied. "That's why I brought you here. Thornridge is more than a manor. It is a stronghold, a sanctuary, and soon it will be a battleground. You have power, Reyna. Power they can't imagine, and they fear it." Dax and Corvin exchanged tense glances, understanding that the moment of quiet would not last. The servants scurried to prepare rooms, sharpen blades, and ready weapons, but all eyes returned to Reyna. She felt naked under their scrutiny, exposed in a way that made her skin crawl. And yet, something else ignited. A small, dangerous spark. She wasn't worthless. She never had been. Aaron stepped closer, his presence enveloping her like a shadowed sun. "You must train," he said. "Now." Reyna's stomach twisted, fear and anticipation colliding. I don't know if I can," she whispered. Aaron's gaze didn't waver. "You will," he said firmly. "Because you have to. Because if you don't, the council will take everything from you, and your mother's sacrifice will be wasted." Reyna clenched her fists, trembling. Training meant learning to fight, to survive, to awaken whatever power slumbered in her blood. Dax led her to the manor's inner courtyard, where the snow of early winter still lingered in patches. Corvin stood ready, eyes calculating, muscles taut. The wind carried a scent of pine and damp earth, mixing with the metallic tang of sharpened blades. Every breath felt like inhaling history and danger together. Reyna's heart pounded with fear, yes, but also something thrilling. The first taste of agency, the first sense that she could become more than a victim. The training began with simple forms, strikes, parries, balance. Corvin moved with precision, each swing a lesson and a warning. "Concentrate," he barked. "Your body must obey your mind before your mind obeys instinct." Reyna tried, but her strikes were weak, awkward, unpredictable. Sweat stung her eyes, and her muscles screamed, but Aaron didn't scold. He stood quietly, watching, calculating. When Reyna faltered again, her staff nearly dropping, Aaron finally spoke, low and sharp. "Feel it in your blood, not your hands. You are not just Reyna Crowther. You are the daughter of Ellery, and the prophecy flows through your veins. Move as though they cannot touch you, because tonight they will try." His words ignited something fierce. Pain turned to fire, weakness into resolve. Every swing became sharper, every stance firmer. She felt alive in a way she never had before, like she could finally stand not just in defense, but in defiance. As night fell, the manor's torches cast long shadows, flickering against the ancient stones. Aaron approached, his coat wet from a drizzle that had returned. "You've done well today," he said, voice softening just enough to make her ache. "But today is only preparation. The council won't wait. They'll strike soon." Reyna's hands trembled, and she looked up at him, eyes wide. "I'm scared," she admitted. Arin knelt slightly, bringing his face level with hers. Good, he said, almost a whisper. Fear keeps you alive. Courage without it is recklessness. Remember that, Reyna. And remember, I chose you. Not because you were perfect, not because you were ready, but because you have something worth protecting. Something they fear. His hand hovered near hers, not touching, yet sending warmth rippling across her skin. The manor around them groaned in the wind, shadows, dancing like ghosts, and in that moment, Reyna realized the fight ahead was no longer just about survival. It was about claiming who she was, facing every betrayal, and awakening the strength she never knew she had. Night draped over Thornridge Manor like a velvet shroud, muffling the wind and sharpening the sounds of movement. Reyna couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old stone, every whistle of the wind against the windows felt like a warning. The ruined veil had changed her. Silas's warning, the council's interference, the sudden awakening of her own power. She sat at the edge of her bed, hands trembling, trying to make sense of it all. The prophecy, the hunt, Arin's choice. It all pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. Shadows danced in the corners of her room, cast by flickering candlelight. She clenched her fists. I won't be useless anymore, she whispered to herself. Outside, wolves howled in the distance, their voices carrying through the valley like echoes of threats and promises. Somewhere far, yet close enough to be real, she felt the presence of her mother's courage, mingled with a warning she couldn't yet interpret. She wasn't alone, yet the loneliness of being marked, chosen, hunted, and feared pressed against her like ice. The manor itself seemed alive, holding secrets in every shadowed corner, every hidden hallway. And tonight, Reyna realized, was not a night for sleep. A sudden knock at the door jolted her upright. Dax stepped in, coat dripping from a light drizzle outside, eyes serious. Alpha says you trained tonight, he said, voice quiet but urgent. Reyna blinked, still shaken from her own thoughts. I can't, she whispered, voice tight with fatigue and fear. Dax's gaze hardened. You can and you will. You're stronger than you think, Reyna. They're coming, and you can't hide behind fear forever. His words hit harder than any blow Corvin had given her during the day. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. The courtyard was slick with moisture, moonlight reflecting off puddles and casting eerie patterns across the ancient stones. Corvin awaited her, staff in hand, eyes glinting with sharp expectation. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, thick with tension. Reyna's pulse hammered, every instinct telling her to flee, yet every lesson Arin had drilled into her reminded her she could not. This night demanded more than obedience. It demanded courage. They moved in the moonlit courtyard. Corvin's staff swung faster than she expected, a blur against the silver light. Her reflexes snapped tighter than before, muscles burning with exertion. Every block, every pivot, every strike carried more intent than the day's training. She felt a new rhythm coursing through her. Blood and power entwined, reacting faster than thought. Corvin barked approval at times, sharp corrections at others. Good, he said, voice low. But remember, anticipation saves lives. Feel them before they strike, not just block after. The cold night bit at her cheeks, sweat mingling with the drizzle. Yet she felt something unfamiliar, exhilaration. Fear still pulsed through her, but it no longer dominated. Somewhere in the shadows, eyes watched them, unblinking, assessing, waiting. Reyna sensed it before she saw it. The council's presence, like a shadow stretching into the courtyard. Her chest tightened. She could feel her mother's strength pulsing in her veins, urging her forward. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the tree line. Torin Maddock, dressed in dark leather, eyes like frozen steel, crossbow in hand. Reyna froze, staff raised instinctively. Corvin positioned himself between her and the council agent. Not tonight, Corvin growled. Torrin smiled thinly, cold and calculating. She shouldn't be here, he hissed, raising his weapon. Dax shifted beside Reyna, muscles coiled to spring. But before the bolt could fly, Reyna's hands glowed faintly, silver light coursing across her fingers, weaving like threads into the air. The bolt struck an invisible barrier. Splintered, harmless. Reyna stumbled back, fear giving way to awe. I did that, she whispered, voice trembling. Aaron's words echoed in her mind. You are marked. They fear you. Her pulse raced. The council had underestimated her. Torrin's expression changed from confidence to horror. She's awakening, he muttered. Without another word, he vanished into the darkness, leaving only whispers of movement behind. Dax exhaled sharply. Corvin lowered his staff, eyes scanning the shadows. This is only the beginning, Dax said, voice tight. Reyna's legs trembled, not from fatigue, but from the raw realization of her own power, a force she barely understood but knew would demand mastery. Moonlight reflected off the manor's stones, the ruins outside, and her trembling hands. Somewhere deep in the forest, wolves howled again, but tonight, Reyna Crowther was no longer the girl called worthless at her mother's funeral. She was awake. She was marked. And the pack, the council, and the shadows lurking beyond Thornridge Manor would all learn soon enough that she would not be defeated without a fight. And when Arryn stepped beside her, silent and strong, she knew that together they would face the storm already gathering over the Grimvale pack. Reyna awoke to the low growl of wolves outside her window. Dawn had yet to break, and the manor lay cloaked in a thick, silvery fog. Her muscles ached from the night's training, but adrenaline and fear had replaced exhaustion with a restless energy she couldn't shake. The ruined veil and Silas Ward's warning echoed in her mind. Tonight, she had felt the first true surge of her power, the spark of something ancient flowing through her veins. She knew the council would return, stronger, more prepared, and Thornridge Manor would be ground zero. Dax and Corvin waited outside, motionless as shadows, their eyes scanning the forest edge. Arryn appeared silently beside them, tall and imposing, eyes the color of winter steel. Today, he said, voice low but carrying weight that made even the fog seem to pause. You will hunt, not for sport, but for survival. If you can't defend yourself in the forest, you will not survive the council's next move. Reyna's chest tightened. Hunting meant more than tracking. It meant facing predators, danger, and her own fear. She nodded, though her stomach churned with nerves. The trio moved into Greyfang Woods. Mist clung to every branch, every broken stone, making each movement sound louder than it was. Aaron led the way, senses sharp, nostrils flaring. Reyna tried to follow, but the weight of her own fear slowed her. Corvin stayed close, guiding her steps, whispering instructions she barely heard. Breathe, he said. Feel the land, the air, the life around you. Don't just look, sense. Reyna tried. She focused, letting the cold mist bite her cheeks, the smell of wet pine fill her nostrils. Slowly, the forest unfolded in her perception. A snapping twig that wasn't her own, a faint rustle in the underbrush, the heartbeat of the soil beneath her feet. And then she sensed it, movement, silent and deliberate. Someone, or something, stalking them from the shadows. Her pulse raced. Dax signaled to stay low. Reyna sank to the ground instinctively, feeling the power inside her shift, tuning her senses like a blade. The first target appeared. A rogue wolf, pale gray fur matted, eyes glowing faintly in the fog. Arryn signaled Reyna forward. She gripped her staff, legs trembling, fear and excitement thrumming together. Corvin's voice in her ear reminded her, anticipate, feel before they strike. The wolf lunged without warning. Time seemed to slow. Reyna pivoted, swinging the staff in a perfect arc, connecting with the wolf's shoulder. It yelped, leaping back. The moment felt like lightning, and Reyna felt something inside her. Raw, unstoppable, ancient. Another wolf emerged, and another. Each strike, each dodge, each movement came more naturally than the last. Sweat and fog mixed on her skin, but she no longer cared. For the first time, she wasn't reacting. She was commanding. She was asserting presence. She was no longer invisible. After what felt like hours, the wolves retreated, slipping silently back into the shadows. Reyna collapsed to her knees, chest heaving, muscles screaming. Arin came to her side, hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "You've done well," he said softly. His silver gaze met hers. "But this was only a fraction of what you must endure. The council will not wait, and neither can you." Reyna's mind spun, but beneath the exhaustion was a surge of pride, a flicker of defiance. She had faced predators, controlled her fear, and awakened her power. Still questions nagged. How much did she truly possess? How far could she go? And what would happen if Aaron were not there to guide her? The fog pressed in closer, but inside Reyna felt fire, determination, and a stirring of something else, longing. The alpha who had chosen her was not just her protector. He was the spark she had unknowingly been waiting for. Evening fell, the forest now a dark labyrinth. As they returned to the manor, Reyna noticed the distant glimmer of light from a rogue camp. Figures moved in the shadows, whispering. Dax and Corvin signaled silence. "The council is already mobilizing," Corvin muttered, "and they've sent more than one hunter." Reyna's hands tingled. She could feel her power responding to the threat, stretching, hungry, eager. The manor appeared behind them, steadfast and ominous against the darkening sky. Arin stood at the gate, coat slick with drizzle, eyes never leaving her. "Tonight," he said, voice sharp with unspoken promise, "we will strike back. But first, you must learn to trust yourself. Your power isn't a weapon if you hesitate." Reyna nodded, determination settling into her bones. The hunt had only begun, and she was no longer the girl called worthless. She was the daughter of prophecy, marked, awakened, and ready to fight. The council had made its first move, and Reyna would meet it head-on. Moonlight glinted off the frost-covered stones of Thornridge Manor as Reyna crouched at the top of the staircase, staff in hand. The wind carried faint sounds of movement, rustling, whispers, and a distant clatter of steel. Her body thrummed with tension, muscles coiled, senses sharpened, beyond what she'd imagined possible. Every shadow seemed alive, stretching, twisting, testing her resolve. Aaron stood beside her, eyes scanning the tree line, a calm predator poised for the strike he knew was coming. "They will come tonight," he said softly, voice like gravel and velvet. "And you must be ready. Trust yourself, Reyna. Trust the strength your mother passed to you." She nodded, pulse hammering. The memory of Silas Ward and the ruined veil surged through her mind. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the prophecy, for her mother's legacy, for the pack that had doubted her from birth. Somewhere deep inside, the girl called worthless was gone. Thornridge hummed around her, stones vibrating with anticipation. The first wave struck as shadows leapt from the trees like wraiths. Torn Maddock led a contingent of council assassins, crossbows glinting under the moon. Reyna's hands glowed faint silver again, the power inside her responding to the threat instinctively. Arrows shattered mid-air against an invisible barrier she didn't fully understand she'd summoned. Dax and Corvin moved beside her, cutting through the attackers with a lethal precision. Wolves of the Grimvale pack howled and surged from the manor grounds, forming a living wall of teeth, claws, and instinct. Reyna's heartbeat synced with the chaos around. Her, a drum of life and power. Her strikes were fluid now, precise, each movement a testament to the training, to fear transformed into strength. The council had underestimated her. They had thought her fragile, a child of whispers. Tonight, she was a storm, and the manor itself seemed to pulse in rhythm with her power. Arin moved like a shadowed titan, silent and swift, intercepting any threat that breached the first line. When he glanced at Reyna, silver eyes flicking with approval, She felt heat rush through her chest, both from recognition and unspoken connection. "Focus," he barked. She pivoted just as an assassin lunged from the shadows, staff striking bone and steel with force that made her gasp. She felt the ancient bloodline in her veins guiding her hands, body and mind. Her mother's courage, Leora's stories, Silas's warnings, everything converged into one electric clarity. One wrong step, one hesitation, and death would have claimed her. Yet she moved with confidence now, striking not just to survive, but to dominate the battlefield. In the middle of the courtyard, the fighting escalated. Council assassins pressed harder, some breaking through Thornridge's walls. Reyna caught glimpses of Aaron clashing with Torin, the Alpha's form a blur of strength and fury. Reyna's staff whirled, striking a man who had crept too close. She felt silver energy flow through her limbs like liquid light, her strikes repelling, parrying, and blasting with an unfamiliar force. Breath came in short, sharp gasps, her eyes wide with focus. Each clash, each step, each heartbeat elevated her beyond her limits. And then, from the shadows, a familiar howl split the night. Wolves of the Grimvale pack, loyal to their alpha and now to Reyna, surged like a tidal wave against the Council's forces. The attackers faltered. Confusion rippled through them. Finally, the last Council assassin fled into the trees, the night falling silent but charged. Reyna collapsed to her knees, chest heaving, hands glowing faintly, pulse racing. Aaron knelt beside her, brushing rain-damp hair from her face. "You did well," he said softly, almost tenderly. Reyna's legs trembled, fatigue and exhilaration intertwining. She realized she hadn't been afraid in the moment. She had been alive, powerful, marked. The Council had attacked, thinking she was weak, but she had awakened in the crucible of fire and shadow. "Tonight," Aaron murmured, eyes locking on hers, "you became more than the Crowther girl. You became the daughter of prophecy." The manor stood behind them, scarred but unbroken, a fortress bound not only by stone, but by the strength of those within. For the first time, Reyna understood the depth of what she carried, the power, the responsibility, the love, and the fear. Thornridge Manor had survived the night, and so had she. And somewhere deep within her, she knew that this was only the beginning. The morning after the siege dawned cold and gray, Thornridge Manor silent except for the low hum of exhaustion and rebuilding. Reyna's body ached, her muscles screamed from the night's battle, but she could not rest. The Council would return. They always did. She stood in the courtyard, staff in hand, eyes tracing the tree line where shadows seemed thicker, darker, charged with impending danger. Aaron appeared beside her, the morning drizzle streaking his silver hair across a face that had been calm and unyielding, now tense, predatory. "They will come," he said softly, yet every syllable vibrated with certainty. Reyna swallowed hard, feeling fear and anticipation clawing at her chest. She remembered the ruined veil, Silas's warning, the glowing silver power that had surged through her the night before. Now she understood. That power was awakening faster than she could control, and the Council would test her limits. By midday, scouts returned with urgent news. Multiple Council contingents were moving toward Thornridge, faster and more coordinated than before. Aaron gathered the pack, his voice sharp, commanding. "Prepare the defenses. Every wall, every hidden passage, every wolf must be ready." Tonight they aim to destroy more than Thornridge. They aim to erase the prophecy, and they will not stop until they succeed. Reyna felt the weight of those words pressing against her shoulders. She had trained. She had fought. But could she face an entire Council army? Doubt flared, only to be replaced by a fire she hadn't known she possessed. She would not falter. She would not hide. The words of her mother, whispered through Leora's stories, echoed in her mind. "You are more than what they see." She drew in a shaky breath. the silver energy in her veins humming like steel strings, vibrating with potential. Night fell faster than expected. Thornridge Manor's walls glowed with firelight, lanterns illuminating the pack's readiness. Wolves patrolled in coordinated sweeps, and the human warriors sharpened blades and checked bows. Reyna stood at the front, staff held firm, aware of the pulse of magic thrumming beneath her skin. Then from the forest, movement. Torrin Maddock emerged first, leading an army of council assassins, crossbows gleaming, faces masked by steel and fury. The tension exploded, a living, breathing entity, pressing against Reyna's chest. Aaron signaled, and the pack surged forward, a tide of fur, muscle, and claws. Reyna followed instinctively, staff swinging, silver energy spilling in arcs that deflected attacks, disrupted formations, and terrified the council forces. Each strike was precise, her fear replaced by focus, by power, by a strange exhilaration that came from embracing the storm inside her. The battle escalated. Council forces pressed harder, using fire, smoke, and shadow to disorient the defenders. Reyna's pulse synced with the chaos. She felt her mother's courage, the ruin veil's warning, the prophecy's weight all collide into a single, unrelenting drive. Torrin lunged at her, blade aimed for her chest. Time slowed, silver light glowing across her hands, and instinct guided her strike. A deflection, a counter, a force that threw him staggering back. Dax and Corvin intercepted, allowing Reyna to breathe, but she knew the battle wasn't over. From the shadows, more assassins advanced, their intent clear. Each of Reyna's strikes now carried not only power, but authority, a declaration. She would not be erased. Aaron moved with lethal precision, cutting a path toward Torrent, each swing of his blade an unspoken promise of protection. Together, they were unstoppable. Finally, after hours of chaos, exhaustion, and raw exertion, the council forces retreated, broken and demoralized. Thornridge Manor stood, scarred but undefeated, bathed in moonlight that reflected silver off Reyna's trembling, sweat-slicked face. The pack gathered around her, eyes wide with awe, respect, and relief. Aaron stepped forward, lowering his voice so only she could hear. You have faced the council, and you have survived. You are no longer the girl they called worthless. You are the Crowther daughter, the prophecy realized. Reyna's knees buckled slightly, but Arn's hand steadied her, the touch sending warmth through her chest. Around her, the pack celebrated, wolves howling, lights flickering, candles glowing against stone walls. The prophecy was no longer a whispered threat. It had manifested in her, alive, unstoppable, and undeniable. And as the first hint of dawn painted the horizon pink and gold, Reyna realized the depth of her transformation. She had faced betrayal, fear, and death. And she had emerged stronger, awakened, and ready to claim not only her destiny, but her life, her strength, and the future of the Grimvale Pack. The first rays of dawn stretched across Thornridge Manor, painting the frost-covered stones with a soft golden glow. The air was crisp, the scent of pine and wet earth mingling with the faint, metallic tang of the night's battle. Reyna stood on the highest balcony, staff resting against her shoulder, eyes scanning the horizon where the council had retreated. Her muscles still throbbed from exhaustion, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. The girl who had been called worthless at her mother's funeral no longer existed. In her place stood a daughter of prophecy, awakened, powerful, and unafraid. She inhaled deeply, feeling the pulse of the manor beneath her feet, the breath of her pack in the courtyards below, and the lingering hum of her own silver energy coursing through her veins. This was her home. This was her legacy. And today, she would claim it fully. Aaron appeared beside her, silent as a shadow, eyes softer now than in battle, though still sharp with command. You did well, he said quietly, voice carrying the weight of pride and something deeper, something unspoken that sent warmth through her chest. Reyna turned to him, gaze steady but still tinged with vulnerability. I I couldn't have done it without you, she whispered. Arn's hand brushed hers briefly, deliberate and grounding. No, he corrected gently. You did it yourself. I only guided. You awakened. That is yours entirely. Raina swallowed, realizing the truth of his words. Every strike, every moment of control, every spark of power she had felt during the council's siege had been hers. She had been chosen, yes, but the strength to rise from humiliation, fear, and doubt had always been within her. And now it roared like a wildfire, unstoppable, undeniable. Below, the pack gathered, their eyes filled with awe, respect, and relief. Wolves padded silently along the edges of the courtyards, ears alert, muscles tense but relaxed under her command. Corvin and Dax stood slightly apart, nodding toward her with approval. Their usual stern expressions softened. Leora Farrow appeared from the shadows, auburn braids glinting in the sunlight, carrying a small bundle. Your mother would be proud, she said softly, placing the bundle in Raina's hands. Inside lay the metal box Raina had glimpsed as a child, now open to reveal a set of scrolls, glowing faintly with a silver light. Prophecies, instructions, maps, and the legacy of Ellery Crowther lay spread before her. Raina's hands trembled as she traced the lines of ink, her eyes widening. The truth she had sought, her mother's courage, her purpose, her destiny, was finally hers to grasp. A soft wind rustled the trees, carrying a familiar scent. Raina turned instinctively, finding Aaron close, silver eyes scanning the horizon, as if sensing the world beyond Thornridge Manor. What now? She asked, voice steady yet tinged with wonder. Arn's expression softened, almost unguarded. Now, he said. You lead. You protect. You decide. You will shape the future of the Grimvale Pack, and no council, no shadow will stop you again. Not while I stand beside you. Raina felt a thrill, a certainty that had eluded her for years. This was more than survival. This was mastery of her own destiny. She stepped down from the balcony, staff in hand, pack and wolves at her side, feeling the hum of energy through every step. She was no longer invisible. She was marked, chosen, powerful, and for the first time, truly free. As the sun climbed higher, painting Thornridge Manor in warm light, Raina paused, looking at the horizon, at the valleys and forests stretching beyond. The council might regroup, danger might return, but she had grown, awakened, and learned to command not only the silver fire within her veins, but the loyalty, trust, and strength of those around her. Arn came close, hand brushing hers once more, a silent promise of partnership, trust, and unspoken affection. Wolves howled in the distance, echoing across the hills, celebrating victory, strength, and survival. And for the first time, Raina smiled without hesitation, without fear. The girl who had been called worthless had risen from ashes, claimed her birthright, and would never be underestimated again. The prophecy had been fulfilled, and a new dawn, one of power, courage, and love, had begun. Before we wrap up, I've switched the narration voice back to the one from earlier videos, and I'd love to hear what you think. Does it feel familiar, or do you like the change? Drop a comment below and let me know. Your opinion really matters. Thank you for joining me on Raina's journey from being called worthless to becoming a powerful force of destiny. If you felt her fear, her courage, and her triumph, hit that like button and subscribe to follow more thrilling stories like this. Share a comment telling me which moment moved you the most, and don't forget to share this video with someone who loves werewolf romance and epic battles. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter of adventure, mystery, and love. Remember, every story is better when we share it together.